What's up guys, welcome back to yet another video, and today we're bringing you an awesome build in collaboration with Aorus and Intel. It's a top of the line enthusiast build and I'm pretty sure you guys are going to have some fun with it. So with that being said, let's bring out all the parts. Friday, bring up all the schematics.
Would you like me to render these?
Yeah.
Render complete.
Alright, awesome. Now, before I check anything, you wouldn't have happened to forget any stick of RAM, right? Friday.
No, of course not.
You really think I wouldn't remember after what happened last time?
It slipped my mind.
You're an AI. Nothing slips your mind.
I might have misplaced one. I would not like to discuss upon this any further.
Oh no, it's materializing. Oof. Do you really think I wouldn't find out after?
I see that you have chosen to not acknowledge my decision, shutting down.
Don't shut down on me, right? Wait, you guys are still rolling? Shut that down. So, hope you guys liked that intro, and going on from there, let's just talk about the main specifications that this build is centered around. So we're starting off with an 11th gen i9-11900k processor, a super fast processor, and we're pairing that with some super fast memory from Aorus, which is the 4400 MHz 16GB kit, and alongside that, we're putting all of that into a Z590 Aorus Master motherboard, and of course, we're pairing it with a nice RTX 3080 Aorus Master. So, with all of those key specifications being mentioned, we'll fill you in on the other bits and pieces as we go through the build. But yeah, with that being said, let's get the build started. Starting the build off with the processor and RAM installation onto the bare motherboard, it was pretty simple. Applying our thermal paste, installing our M.2 SSDs, and then moving on to shifting the bare bones PC into the case itself, installing our radiator onto the case itself, installing the CPU block onto the processor, and after we'd done that, our main frame of the PC was actually done. All we needed to do was add the finishing touches, such as our 2TB hard drive, our power supplies, and after that, managing the cables a little bit, connecting the front I/O, and after a little bit of finishing touches and putting on the side panels, and doing a nice little peel. Since we were planning to push the i9-11900k a good bit, we kept in mind that it does run quite hot, and if you have an unlocked processor like us, not overclocking it is a waste. So to allow some overhead space for overclocking, we've decided to use an Aorus Waterforce X360, which will be providing us with plentiful cooling and some beautiful aesthetics as well, and of course all of these parts are going to be residing in a case worthy of their power, the C700 glass. It's a little unconventional, but it's a huge full tower case with a personality of its own. It's nearly half my size and twice my weight. Exaggeration. But overall, it's a really nice looking case that perfectly suits our entire enthusiast theme. So, with that being said, the build was done. So, hope you guys enjoyed that time lapse of the build. And now that we're done with the basic build itself, all that's left is to test the system. But before we go on to that, let's just talk about the system a little bit. Obviously, this is an entirely high-end enthusiast build. It's going to be handling anything that you throw at it really, really well. And pretty much whether it's 3D, whether it's visual effects like I do, or whether it's any kind of editing or 4K gaming, it's going to be able to run anything, which is the nice part about this build. It's fit for any type of gaming or any type of workload scenario. So it's a pretty beastly system right here. So yeah, with that being said, let's load up the benchmarks and play some Valorant. It's going to be pretty damn fun seeing what this build can do. Starting off with our synthetic benchmarks, we saw 623 on the single core side of Cinebench R20 and a multi-core result of 6302. In 3D Mark Time Spy, we saw a score of 18,124 on the graphics and 9,267 on the CPU score. So when we tested Valorant at 4K 1440p and 1080p, around the 240 to 300 FPS mark in actual standard gameplay, whereas it did hit much higher numbers around 460 to 600 in places like the range and custom. But for the sake of being realistic towards the actual in-game performance where it matters most, these numbers are the ones we decided to benchmark mainly. In Red Dead Redemption 2, we see around 73 FPS at 4K Ultra settings in St. Denis, the most intensive part of the game, and dropping down to 1440p shows us a nice boost to 109 FPS on average. However, it should go without saying that exploring other parts of the map, which were much less demanding, resulted in much higher frames, so keep in mind that these are the average frames for the more demanding parts of the game. Now on to Cyberpunk, which you can call the crisis of RTX games. It gave us a whopping 42 frames in 4K ultra settings with psycho RTX settings with DLSS set to balanced. And while that seems incredibly low for such a high-end card like a 3080, this game runs incredibly choppy on anything you throw at it, and getting 42 frames is actually quite impressive. And if you go down to no RTX, you see a nice 87 FPS at 4K while still running at ultra settings, so that's a nice result anyway. But as far as 1440p numbers go, we see a similar performance hit whenever you're trying to use RTX, seeing that the FPS drops below the 4K no RTX frame rate, posting around 80 to 90 FPS cruising around Night City. But as soon as you drop to 1440p with RTX off while still being at ultra settings, the FPS shoots up to 120 to 130 frames per second give or take, and actually it's quite a nice experience, save for the occasional drops here and there going into different situations. But that's just Cyberpunk for you. So yeah, given how incredibly tough this game is to run, pretty good results so far. And as much as I'd like to go on over some more benchmarks, these few games are about all that I had time to test this time around. I really hope that we can make another high-end build and include titles like R6 or CS and other titles, but for now this is all we've got. With that being said though, I think we can come to the conclusion that this build should be able to handle whatever you throw at it. Especially if you're anything like me, whether it's working on VFX or editing YouTube videos or short films, or playing AAA games or just streaming some Valorant, this PC will handle any of that and more. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I'll be focusing on creating a much more scientific PC build video the next time I get around to making one, but with that being said, I'll see all you beautiful people in the next one.